Though we're still analyzing the devices in our laboratory, these are not hoax devices.
Well, welcome back to Up. I'm David Gura. FBI Director Christopher Wray there is stating clearly that explosives mailed to high-profile Democrats are not a hoax, but some of President Trump's supporters are not so sure.
Just because somebody Trump sticker on their car doesn't mean they're a Trump fan.
Barack Obama probably sent his to himself, and Hillary Clinton probably sent hers to herself.
So you don't think this guy actually sent these bombs to these officials?
No, probably not.
Why?
They probably had it done. They may have paid him to do it.
I think I heard something about it being Bernie Sanders supporter.
Got the panel back with me. Also have NBC's investigative reporter Tom Winter, who's been all over this story. And Tom, I want to get your reaction to what you heard there. You've been talking to law enforcement. You've been looking at the affidavit. You've been continuing to explore this story.
Sure.
Describe that in opposition to what we heard in those clips there just a moment ago.
Look, I mean, I think obviously these are still just allegations, and as the Justice Department said yesterday, you know, somebody is innocent until proven guilty.
First thing Jeff Sessions said when he was out there.
Exactly, and they have to say that. Yeah. But I mean, boy, this is a high bar. You've got somebody's fingerprints on the packages. You've got DNA evidence. You're going to have the statements that this person has made on social media, numerous statements. We're talking about just in the commercial break some of the things that this person said about Joe Biden. So, you know, when you look at the totality of this, and we're just scratching the surface of what they have. This is just a complaint. This is to get him in custody, to get him off the street, to get him from stopping to send these bombs. And so when people look at this and say, well, they probably paid him to do it, or it's a false flag, or it's a... How do you get beyond physical evidence there? I remember people, I covered the Johar Tsarnaev trial in Boston. I remember people saying, well, it couldn't have been him. It had to be somebody else. People tweeting it, oh, you're lying, you're covering up for the government. I'm sorry, the guy's 25 feet away from me, standing up in the courtroom saying, hey, it was me and I did it, and I was the one, and this is why I did it. I mean, what more do you need at that point? So I think when we look at this, it's just are we not doing a good enough of a job explaining this to people, or are folks just never going to get around the fact that physical evidence exists tying this person doing it, and this is actually what happened? It's just the facts. It's just that simple.
Mara, let me ask you about what's in the water in Trump country. We're not going to ascribe blame here. These are just allegations, as Tom said, but there's a very fine piece by your colleague Kevin Roose looking at these false flags in the New York Times today. And what was fringe has now been brought into the mainstream, at least again, in this part of Trump country.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the most disturbing things about the time we're living in right now is this idea that this assault on truth and the assault on facts and on factuality. And once you've got a certain segment of the population kind of believing that there is no fact, there's no such thing as truth, right? It's just about, you know, their belief in Donald Trump, and so they believe the messenger no matter what he says. It's a very scary place to be, and there's probably a long conversation to be had about how we got here. And I do wonder about the demise of the local media and how much of a role that played in all this. But, you know, I don't think that there are any facts that we could show some people in this country at this point that would convince them of a narrative that they don't want to believe.
Well, and the real danger, and I'll say this as the one non-official member of the media here, but the real danger of what Donald Trump is doing is his attacks on the media. Tom, you asked, can we explain it better? No, you explain it absolutely right. But the problem is because of these attacks on the media, undermining the media's credibility, people just don't believe anything the media says. Of course, the media is the messenger of the information to the public. So if you don't believe the messenger because of what these attacks about fake news and the attacks on the freedom of the press, then you're not going to believe any of the facts because you just think they're made up. And that is the most dangerous, perhaps, thing that Trump is doing in this era.
I mean, when you see the continued attacks on law enforcement, in particular the FBI, I understand that that may be a political strategy so that if information later comes out about you, people question that information. But on a grand scale, it's a really dangerous thing for the republic when truth just seems to become so muddled in the public's eyes. And so I think that's something that's really dangerous going forward. I think it's one of the reasons why we do try to explain this so well, and also offer people a little bit of transparency as to, hey, here's how we're getting this information. This is where it's coming from. it's coming from a court document, it's coming from here, it's coming from there. So I think those things are important. I think this case, you know, I have people tweeting at me now, literally just before I came in, saying, well, he said he didn't do it. You know, that's what he told people yesterday. I mean, if you and I had $1 for every time a defendant said that they didn't do it, we wouldn't need to be working here this morning. I mean, between you prosecuting cases and me reporting on cases, I mean, this is just, it happens all the time. So, you know, I think when you look at it, you know, you had that person say, well, they probably paid him to do it. This guy was working at a strip club a night ago.
A male review, Tom.
Yeah, so I think he was bouncing in a strip club, according to the local report. So I mean, we're really getting to the heart of the truth here. But I mean, I think when you look at that, it's like this is how this happens. There's not some grand conspiracy here. So it's just it's a really challenging time.
Jonathan, come back to you lastly here. I mentioned the last block. There's this tension between one way the president talks about law enforcement and another way. We saw that on display yesterday. Quotation marks in the morning surrounded by bomb, praise for law enforcement for finding a needle in the haystack later in the afternoon. Your sense of how that's resonating throughout law enforcement? This is not, shall I say, the first time he is cast doubt on the law enforcement apparatus.
Obviously his relationship with the FBI is, shall we say, complicated.
Fraud, yes.
Yeah, and that, you know, and the Attorney General, who everyone believes is in his last few weeks on the job. I mean, he has, when it's been politically expedient, he has taken shots at law enforcement, and then at the same time he praises them when he wants to associate himself with being tough on crime or tough on terrorism or whatever it might be. And he himself, as I said, fueled some of these doubts. I mean, you know, this is not just supporters at a rally who perhaps cast doubt on whether this guy was the bomber or not, but there are prominent Republicans in the media. We've had Lou Dobbs, we've had Rush Limbaugh. Both suggest there's a possibility of a hoax. The president's eldest son liked a whole bunch of tweets that were very much calling this a false flag. And then, yes, Trump himself yesterday puts the word bomb in quotes in that tweet where he complained about how much media coverage had been getting. And certainly he, more than most, maybe more than all, has been the person who has stirred up this doubt in the media and certainly has very much played a role in creating this like hyper-partisan environment where it's red versus blue and you can't even agree on the same set of facts anymore.
All right, Tom, we're going to let you get back to the reporting. Thank you very much for your help this morning. Tom Winter joining us here on set. And just ahead of all the issues driving voters to the polls, what do they really care about the most? The risks of the president putting all his eggs in the one basket of the economy.